Going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you all. Assuming you are tardy. Not tardy. Is it tardy? No. Assuming you're prompt. Anyways, whatever. Back recording from my home today. We'll be both in and out of the studio, kind of just depending on logistics and people's locations. And today we have an amazing episode with an amazing guest, Mr. Trent Shelton. Yeah, wouldn't you say, Krissy? I don't know. I mean, I loved talking to Trent. It was really cool.
I loved it. I love talking to him too. I'm so glad we had a chance to do that. I am also reporting from my home today, by the way.
Krissy is back in LA. Welcome back.
I'm back in
Krissy.
LA. No, he was so great, so inspiring, such good information, such good ways and tips to talk to your kids, family, your friendships, how to grow relationships. And it was great. I really enjoyed it.
I loved it, and I hope you guys will too. Now that Krissy's back in LA and we get back in the studio, we'll start teasing you with a little bit more Krissy.
Teasing me?
No, we've had some people wondering who's this Krissy producer person. Krissy's great. Krissy's great. I met Krissy. I had a general meeting with Krissy once.
You did. You did have a general meeting with me once.
She hired me for once
for the American Music Awards.
Yeah.
And you killed it.
Sure. Anyways, yeah, we'll just sprinkle some Krissy in here and there. Anything else before we get to Trent? I don't know. Probably have
I loved how engaging you both were with each other. It's such a good conversation. I'm really excited about it for people to hear it.
Well, we'll just stop rambling and we'll get right to Trent. Don't forget to send in your questions at asknick@castmedia.com, cast with a K for Ask Nick episodes on Monday. For those of you tuning in to check out Trent for the first time, welcome. We appreciate you joining. And check out some of our other episodes. I think you'll really enjoy that. Other than that, let's get to Trent. How's it going, Trent? Thanks for joining.
It's going good, Nick. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys for bringing me on your platform. Truly.
Yeah, my pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time. You're doing a lot of great things out there, and I'm guessing there's a lot of people in my audience who are already familiar with your work, but figured just maybe a great way to start off is for those who don't know your story, just give them a little bit of a background on what you, what you're doing, but more importantly, how did you find yourself in this niche role that you're doing and you're doing great things?
Yeah, man. To not take, I guess, 3 hours telling it, I think I mastered telling the story in 2 minutes. So, my career started with sports. Obviously, that was what I wanted to do since a young age, and just got the opportunity. I always owe give praise to my two older brothers because it was them two versus me. So anytime I got against kids my age, I felt advanced because I was always going against my two older brothers.
Yeah.
And so got a chance, man, to, all sports I played, football just happened to be the one for me. And it made most sense, with my size. I love basketball, but I'm 6'2". I mean, it's kind of hard unless you're Allen Iverson to make it that way. So I got a scholarship to go to Baylor. And at Baylor, I had a great career, all Big 12. I thought I was going to get drafted. It didn't happen, but I got picked up as a high priority free agent to the Colts, and that was in 2007. They won the Super Bowl in 2006, so it was really cool to, join a great organization.
Yeah.
Coach Dungy, Peyton, all those guys, and just to kind of fast forward through that, my NFL career obviously was my dream, but became my biggest nightmare because it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. I mean, getting cut, getting released, probably 10, 11 times throughout my 3-year career, 3 different teams, different cities, and depression and all these things hit because, sometimes it's September and I'm at home back in Fort Worth. And I'm not going out because people are going to be like, why are you here? You're supposed to be in Indy. And so I just suppressed myself and isolated myself. And 2 situations, man, really changed my life. And in 2008, my son, the birth of Tristan. Now, Tristan wasn't playing. Me and Maria are now married. But at that time, Tristan wasn't playing. But Tristan was my greatest rescue because it made me finally realize in my life that I was a leader and I had to lead. My son was going to either follow, a way that I was leading that was great or a path that was bad. And so it made me really man up as a man and get myself together. And in 2009, man, I made a decision. I was in my room and I looking around at all the the trophies and everything. And I was like, man, is this it? Like, is this just going to be my life? Is it over? Like, I mean, as we know, if you're a sports athlete, most athletes, you know, that's all you know. You know, I didn't work a 9 to 5 my whole entire life. So it's like, is this it? And the words rehab time, bro, just came to my mind. I don't know, you know, I don't know where that came from, but the word rehab time came to my mind. I thought of rehab as putting the strength back into a weakness, because there were so many times in sports I was hurt. I went to rehab and I came back stronger, even though the process of rehab, you know, sucked and taught me a lot of patience. So I said mind, body, and soul. And so I started picking up books. I wasn't reading books then. I started training at a different level. I started doing all these things. And as I started to share my journey, man, people started to catch on to it. And the big thing that really, really like cemented everything was 2011. One of my best friends committed suicide, my college roommate. And that changed everything for me, because I mean, to this day, it's still surreal. But me going to his funeral and just telling him, like, bro, I don't feel like I was there for you like I should have been. I promise you that I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping people know their self-worth, like helping people know that just because something is over doesn't mean your life is over. And that was my reason. And so that reason has carried me all the way to 2020, where we're at today.
Yeah, I mean, that's I appreciate you sharing, and it's you know, fascinating to hear. You know, as it relates to your friend, I mean, was it just more, you know, you have this mission, obviously, like you said, is to try to help people, whoever you interact with, to know their own self-worth, which is, you know, great to hear. And kind of in a very indirect way, we do that on our show here, especially when it comes to people in relationships and dating, and young women who are spending more time trying to get guys to like them than worrying about, knowing their self-worth, kind of thing. Is that, did you beat yourself up in terms of like when your friend passed away, in terms of, or was there something you specifically identified where you weren't there for him, or was it just say,
yeah,
hey man, I there were these little moments where I could have or should have noticed?
Yeah, man. One major moment, me and my other best friend were like, we all were roommates. And so
Yeah.
we had a conversation probably 3 weeks before, and I was at his house like, man, we need to hit up Anthony. You know, he lived in San Antonio. And it was just like, okay, I'll hit him up later. And just throughout leaving college, I was playing professionally. He was playing professionally, but he quit. And I think that's a big part of it. He got into the military. And so my regret was, man, like, I wish I would have checked on him more.
Yeah.
I wish I would have talked to him more. But losing so many people in my life, grandparents and everything, I think that's the first thing you think about when you lose someone close to you. But then it made me think about how would he want me to honor his name? And so even to this day, when people pass away, I'm always thinking about that. Like, okay, how can I keep them alive? And I knew he had a bad relationship, and I knew he lost football, and I knew that made him not want to live life no more. So that's why you hear a lot of my messages. I will help people be like, hey, like, just because you lose something, don't lose yourself. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah. That is definitely true. I mean, what are some of the things in terms of, what you're out there and speaking to your audience? How can people try to manage disappointment in your life? Because right, that's what we're kind of talking about is, no matter what you have in life, big or small, like, you're not going to get what you want, right? Understanding what you want versus what you need is a challenge people have in life. What are some, best practices that you've noticed that people could do on a daily basis to try to manage expectations? And then instead of, like you said, having it, cause them to maybe, lose themselves, but use that as an opportunity to find some growth?
Yeah, man, I think it's a few things, I have the struggle right now. I always talk about worth, and a lot of people say, know your worth, know your worth. But I think a lot of people say it, but they don't understand it. And so one of the things that I often teach is tell people is like, you need to really understand what worth is made of. And one of the things that I try to cement in people's hearts is that, worth is not an external thing. And a lot of times we tie our worth to external things, to a relationship, to a status, how many followers we have. And as long as your worth is dependent on something outside of you, your inside will always be controlled. So I like to say it's like a puppet master. So if NFL, for example, right? When it was going great, I felt great. When it was going low, I felt low. And so I often try to tell people to identify the puppet masters that are controlling your life, right? That are pulling the strings in your life, so you can understand that. And I believe worth is made up of two things, right? The acceptance of self and the confidence of self. and just accepting yourself fully. That means imperfections, everything. And confidence is obviously just believing in yourself to the max. And the thing is, I feel like a lot of times, you know, and this has helped me realize stuff. There's going to be people in your life that are people that you meet, people that you encounter. They're not going to know your value. They're not going to see your worth. And I actually saw like a parable that made perfect sense. I don't know if y'all saw it online, but it was this guy had basically gave a car to, our grandfather gave a car to his granddaughter. He's like, hey, this car is worth a lot of money. Like, go sell this car. And she's like, okay, cool. And so she goes to the dealership and they're like, this car is not worth nothing. And then she goes to the next dealership. She goes to probably 10 dealerships in 10 places. And they're like, they're not worth nothing. And she finally goes to this car club. And this car club is like, oh my gosh, like, where did you get this car from? This is like super valuable, and pays her $100,000 for the car.
Sure.
And so like, how does that relate? It relates because a lot of times we're trying to get people to see how valuable we are when they're blind to it, and we go to the wrong people. So the right person will see that for you. So that's the first thing, having people like really know their worth. The second thing I feel like is setting boundaries for your life. And so if you don't have boundaries, the voids in your life will control your life. A lot of times we fall into bad things because we're lonely. We fall into bad things because we're at a low emotional level. So set boundaries, whatever that is, like things that are non-negotiable. So for me, I don't trust myself to make the right decisions all the time. I don't, you know, because temptation might show up, an opportunity might show up, all these things, but I trust my values and my principles and my boundaries to make the right decisions for me. So if it goes against my values, I'm not going to do it. No matter how good it may appear to be, I know in the long run, it's probably not going to be good for my life. No matter how great the opportunity may appear to be, I'm not going to do it because it might not be right for my life. So I think you got to get crystal clear and have non-negotiables in your life that you're not going to budge for nothing. And that takes a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that was kind of my follow-up, is like, are you setting those on your own? Do you suggest that people do that? I know you don't want to rely too much on outside influences, but obviously people's circles of influence, like maybe it's your wife or a friend or a mentor, things like that. How can people kind of, well, how can they do that? Because you're right. It's nice to have a support system, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And it's nice to like have these non-negotiables. I like how you use that in terms of, you know, because you're right. Day in and day out, we are faced with various temptations and little moments of weaknesses. And it's nice to have people check us.
Absolutely. Like, that's the thing about friends, right? And it takes a level of security too, and being secure with yourself, because, you know, everybody wants to call people haters, right? It's just like, oh, you hold me accountable, you're a hater, or you're going against me. And that's not the truth. Some people are naturally telling you the truth. So you have to have a trusted circle, which I talk a lot about with knowing your circle, a trusted circle of people that will help you develop these things, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your kids. You know, even my son, you know, I help make him hold me accountable to the things I hold him accountable for. And so when you have that type of environment, which I like to call it a growth environment, it helps. It isn't always easy because it makes you uncomfortable, but those are the people that you need in your life that will check you if you don't want to check yourself. And I think the ultimate place is you get to the place where you can check yourself. And I often ask myself every single day, or every day, every other day, or at least once a week, right? At least. And I reflect and I say, okay, what are the things that I did this week that didn't lead me to where I want to go? A lot of people don't have destinations in their life too. And I think once you have a destination, a mission, a meaning for your life, then it becomes a lot easier to make certain decisions, because you know those decisions are either going to move you closer to it or move you further away from it. So,
well, I'll tell you what, Krissy, I don't know about you. I love delicious food. I love delicious food. I love delicious food that's easy to make. And I really hate, listen, I'm a single serving guy. I'm alone. I live alone. And when I go to the grocery store, sometimes I'm trying not to, because obviously we're trying to stay inside more. And HelloFresh is making it so much easier for me to both stay inside, eat delicious food, and not have to worry about, like, you know, buying all these groceries. It's really perfect.
You don't have as much waste.
I don't. I have definitely less waste, and I don't have to, like, I hate always thinking, like, what should I make? You know, what should I do? And then, like, you buy all these little ingredients just for, like, as a single serving guy. Like, if I need like a certain spice, I'll spend like $7 on the spice or whatever. It's annoying.
You only use it once.
I only use it once, like a year later. Anyways, HelloFresh, they have all the ingredients. You know, if it needs a spice, they have it in there. It's a single serving spice. Pre-portioned ingredients mean there's less prep and you will need less wasted food, like I said. HelloFresh has more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, so you know you're going to get something delicious. Yeah, did you know that the average trip to the grocery store is 41 minutes? And that's even when, like, you know what you want. I mean, I go to the grocery store and I'll just, like, sit in aisle 4, just like in a glazed look, and people will be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know." HelloFresh. Yeah, HelloFresh. I'll tell you what, I'm still watching Netflix, and I'm like, and now I'm going to open up my HelloFresh. It takes 20, 30 minutes to make your very easy dinner, and bam, you're ready to go. And if you like supporting companies that support good causes, HelloFresh donated over 2.5 million meals to charities in 2019. And this year, they are stepping up their food donations amid the COVID virus crisis. So to get HelloFresh, use my code ViallFiles80 to get $80 off with purchase, including free shipping on your first box. So once again, that's HelloFresh.com and use code ViallFiles80, VIALL Files80. Go to HelloFresh.com for more details. I can't tell you, I love flavor in my drinks, and I hate drinking sugar. And I'll tell you what, Liquid IV has just made that so much easier on me. I bet there's a lot of people out there like me that's just like, they know they should drink more water, but it's boring.
So boring.
Water's so boring.
Water's so boring.
It's like the most boring thing. Liquid IV makes water fun, and then you get hydrated. It's like drinking 2 to 3 bottles of water in a single sitting. It's packed with vitamins. It's got as much potassium as a banana, and I don't like bananas. So that's an extra win for me. Non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free. You need to hydrate, people. It's great for a pre-workout, post-workout. Obviously, if you have too much alcohol, it's great for that. But honestly, I just drink it every day and feeling more hydrated and better than ever before. Most importantly, it's delicious. My favorite's lemon lime. I like it. I love it. It's great.
I like that figgy berry.
So if you want to get your own Liquid IV, it's available nationwide at Costco, or you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use my code VIALL at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order when you use promo code VIALL at liquidiv.com. Get better hydration today at liquidiv.com, promo code VIALL. Yeah, I mean, choosing friends, it's such a big part of our life. And friends, I guess you can equate that, eventually we want to, we say we want to marry our best friend or date our best friend, but that is a challenge because people can have a friend circle and they can accumulate friends over time and then take a step back and go, wow, none of these people are helping me be the best version of myself. Or maybe they're all enablers, or I have a bunch of people who agree with me all the time, and every time I come to them, they're definitely saying something I want to hear, but nothing is really helping. And then that can be a big challenge for people, especially right now, with conversations that are going on in the world today in terms of, how do we have conversations with our friends that might not always see eye to eye, or our conversations with our friends are very surface level. We talk about all the things that we agree on, like maybe we're sports fans, so we talk about our love for sports, but then we get in the nitty gritty and we're not able to have these conversations with the people in our circle. Yeah,
man. The silliest illustration that I use all the time, and to me, it reflects like what a real and true friend is. Right? A real friend is not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what you need to hear, whether you like it or not. And one of the illustrations that I like to use is so simple. If I was walking off a cliff, right, blindfolded, and I'm walking towards the edge, what are you going to tell me to do? If you're my friend, you're going to tell me to stop, right? Obviously, hopefully you would tell me to stop. Like probably yell it like, you're crazy. Yeah. What are you doing? Now, if you didn't like me or you weren't really my friend, maybe you even hated me, people were usually, they'll tell you to stop. I mean, they'll say, keep going, or they'll probably say nothing. And silence to me often says a lot. And so if you're going to just watch me destruct my life, and I've been there before, like when I was playing NFL, I had all the friends in the world that were watching me destruct my life. I've been a bad friend to people. I always don't want to point the finger. I've been that friend. And so I want people in my life that's going to hold me accountable to the things that I say I want to do. And one of the things that you can do right now, people listening to this, is check your text messages. Check the conversations you're having with people. And I have 3 levels. I have family, which isn't always blood. But family is people that I know for a fact that I got their back. I can call them right now, no questions asked. They're going to tell me the truth. They're going to say, Trent, like I had a call with a family member today. It's like, hey, you don't need to have Tristan out there playing football. Whether, however you feel, don't have him do that. I have friends where it's kind of, maybe so. I trust them. I depend on them, but not as much as family. I have associates. Associates is just, we're just cordial, right? I don't expect anything from it. And I think when you get people confused, it brings a lot of confusion in your life. But check your text messages. Like, what are the conversations that you're having with your friends? And if it's not growth conversations and you say that's somebody that's close to you and special with you, then maybe you might need to do some rearranging and check your circle, because as they always say, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around, and your life is going to be exactly like them. So a thing that I often ask myself that holds me accountable, and I don't really say it to my friends, but I ask, like, do I want to catch what they have? Right? Because mindsets are very contagious. What you surround yourself around is what you'll be like. And if I don't want to catch what they have, I don't want to be around them. And it isn't always like greatness. Like, I have friends that are dope fathers that inspire me to be a better father, or dope friends, whatever like that. So if you're not inspired by your circle, you need to change it.
Totally. Also, I like how you worded the check your text messages too, because, sometimes I think people confuse, friendship with something that's not friendship. I'm missing a word for it. But for example, like sometimes, especially when we're younger, maybe we're impressed by someone, their access to a certain type of world. Maybe this type of, there's a lot of people who say they like friends, but they just really like to accumulate people who listen to them. They like followers, right? And so if your quote unquote friendship is more about like, being like just having access to a certain type of person, but you're not offering them anything as a friend and they're not listening to you. And it's like you said, you check your text messages, it's a very one-sided relationship. It's a good chance to look at that relationship and see what you get out of it, because you're right. Like, you could be at risk of, again, going down a wrong path because it's not a friendship. You're maybe just excited about like, oh my God, this person hangs out with so-and-so, and since I've been hanging out with them, like I get to do X, Y, and Z, but like, what are they doing? Like, what's that relationship really look like? And are you compromising, like you said, your non-negotiables because you have these, really bright eyes of like the excitement of, what they're doing. And we've all been there. I know I've done that. You meet someone, they seem really cool, they're really charming, exciting, and then all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, you just kind of feel compromised after a while. And the ability to identify that is always really important, especially when it comes to friendships.
Absolutely. I think a simple question, I say to my spoken word friends, if all you have to offer was friendship, like, who would still be around? Because like you said, some people, and you have to check yourself with this too, because I've been that person too. Yeah. But sometimes people are around you for what surrounds your life, not for you. Yeah. Right? They're around there for the benefits a lot of times. So, if those benefits weren't there, and this has happened, I'm sure it's happened to you, when the benefits leave, their loyalty leaves with it. And you start to realize like, oh, okay, I see why you were here for it. So you got to find people who love you for who you are and not necessarily for what you do. They appreciate you for what you do, but who you are, that's what they truly care about. And that's what I try to surround my life around as much as I can.
Totally. A nice segue, I think, into this conversation is, talking about friends is, we've talked a lot about Black Lives Matter on this podcast, and it's always been important for us to continue to learn. And someone like yourself, who's obviously talked a lot about it, and I'd love you to share some light. But I've started to have more and more conversations with my friends. I've continued to open myself to learning about information, from people of color or other Black people who can just educate me on things. And I'm wondering, like, I'm assuming you're having a lot of different conversations, both with your inner circle, even your kids, and then say some of your white friends. And like, you talk a lot about helping people understand kind of, what Black Lives Matter means. And I'm assuming you're having different conversations with your kids versus, what conversations, say, white families have to have with their kids and things like that. And what are some of the differences you are seeing, and how can we continue to come to a place where this makes sense to everyone and it becomes less divisive and less confrontational?
Yeah, man. So a short answer is empathy. I think empathy could change the world. And I know sometimes it's hard to actually feel empathy and experience empathy, but you have empathy through conversations, because every single one of us, we have different experiences. Every single one of us, even when people like, I almost have empathy, and this might seem even crazy to say, for even people who might have been racist, because it's probably been taught to them, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, it's been taught to them their whole entire life. This is what they think is right, even though it's not right, but this is what they think is right. So I'm always thinking about that when I'm trying to either help people or have these conversations. And the thing about it, what I'm seeing is a culture of what about me? Like, it's like, what about me? And but. And, we live in a culture right now where, and I want to say this too, what I've been seeing is beautiful. I've been seeing a lot of people come together, and I'm all for that. But I think we live in a culture right now, and it is getting better, but people would rather offer opinions before they even send condolences, right? We live in a culture where everybody wants to be right for significance. And I'm just like, we will never come together, because selfishness doesn't create togetherness. And so until you get outside of self, until you can say, my perspective might not be right, even if it's right in my eyes, my perspective right now might not be right. So let me have a conversation. Let me educate myself. I had to educate myself even more. And I'm a Black man, right? And I started to see myself as a part of the problem. And this is the thing. If we can all see ourselves as a part of the problem, something I told my kids, if we can all see ourselves as a part of the problem, that's a great thing, because then we can finally see that we each have the power to become a part of the solution. So like, what's one thing that you can do, I can do? And it looks different from everybody. So sometimes it's conversations. Sometimes, I've told my white friends that, that say, I've never experienced racism in my life. I said, just because you didn't experience it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Here's some things that I've been through. Go to the inner city, go to a different environment so you can actually feel and understand it. And I think Black people should do that too. Have conversations of like, oh, I see why you never have experienced this. So until we get to that place where nobody wants to be right to prove themselves right, and just say, what's the big right picture for us all, which I feel like is love thy neighbor as you love yourself. Look out for your neighbor as you want to be looked out for. Give the same sensitivity to your neighbor that you would expect if your father, your brother was killed. Until we get to that place, I feel like, we'll continue to go through this hamster wheel. So that's
a challenge, right? It's a constant challenge.
Very much so.
One thing I've really learned in the past 2 months, thinking about this stuff a lot and having conversations with my friends. I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin, right? And I grew up very conservative, and even my friend, I have a great group of friends and loving people, but we just grew up in a very white world, right? And Milwaukee is a very segregated city. So even though we lived in Milwaukee, Black people were on one part of town, white people on another part of town, Hispanic, and it's, you think you're, it's like, I've never seen racism. And one thing I've really learned is, just because we think we haven't seen racism, like, kind of to your point, doesn't, like, we just weren't looking for it, just the subtleties of racism, like I gave this example. I think a lot of people watch movies like The Help, and they see this overt racism, and they're like, well, I haven't seen that, so I'm good, but we're not looking at, we haven't been in tuned and aware. And then it's when you get into kind of the privilege conversation about it's just been convenient not to notice. We've looked the other way. Listen, we're always looking for safe ways to scent our indoor air. We're always looking for non-invasive approaches to help us sleep better, to help with our headaches. And as a reminder, Natural Habits Essential Oils is doing great things for those both. Obviously, you guys know it's my company, Natural Habits. I founded it with my sister, Maria, and we are very proud of the oils that we have. We focus on blends. USDA organic certified. We are not a multi-level marketing company. That's very important to us because there's a lot of those out there. And quite honestly, we are proud for the quality that we have and the fact that we're USDA organic certified. So, we have blends. Rise, Protect, Center, Release. Center is great for headaches. Release, helping you sleep. Protect, just support your immune system. And Rise, just a great energy boost and refreshing odor. And certainly much more safe than any plugins, Febreze air fresheners that you can put in your house. Certainly more safe than a candle that's full of toxins to scent your indoor air. And we're staying inside a lot more often.
I'm like, honestly, this is the only reason why I became friends with you is to be able
Why?
to use your oils. I literally, and I'm not just saying this, but I literally take it with me everywhere I go,
Which
especially with
one's
the roll.
which one do
It's
you
the
use?
center roll on, and it's because I have really bad headaches all the time. And so I feel like the blend, especially, is so much different than just using like the regular peppermint oil. The blend makes it such a big difference. And I always roll it on the back of my neck, and I always put it on my wrist, and I always put a little bit on my chest. And it really does help me so much. It really, really does.
Well, Krissy, I appreciate the good review.
And that's not fake. That's like serious, for real.
Well, we sell them in our, again, as Krissy mentioned, in our roll-on forms that you could take with you anywhere, or drops, pure essential oils that you can put right in a diffuser. Check us out at nhoils.com, nhoils.com, and use promo code, like, you know what? Code Krissy, since she gave us such a great review, Krissy, Krissy, for 25% off. And right now we are donating 30% of our profits to small companies that are Black owned and doing great things in their community. So extra bonus, nhoils.com. And like you said, like, you know, when I was a young man, you know, I had the luxury of being taught, like, you know, every police officer, great, and you respect authority, and if someone's committing a crime, they deserve it, right? It was that simple. And again, I have a cop who's a brother who's a cop. There are a lot of great police officers out there, but sometimes the devil's in the details of, like, it hasn't been that way for everyone, and you can't just assume everyone is treated the same. And there's just kind of like this awakening of taking a step back and, like you said, showing empathy and just putting yourself in someone else's shoes before you try to make an argument of why you're right or why it's a certain way. Because it's scary. It's scary to say, and I've tried to say to my friends, like, I've been ignorant. We've been ignorant. Like, let's not get defensive by acknowledging our ignorance. You're only gonna, but if you refuse to, you know, acknowledge it, that's when it gets bad. Then it's on you, right? You know, now you are an adult. You have the chance to educate yourself. You have a chance to learn and have conversations. Before, maybe you were just a product of your environment, and maybe your environment was great, right? Your environment overall was really nice and loving, but again, did you really take the time to sit down and appreciate someone else's point of view? And I think you said it really, really well. But yeah. Definitely a big difference between not seeing racism and not having it be there. And that's been my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, the subtle things, like you said, I mean, I 100% agree. That's like, we think that we got to see somebody like, you know, crazy, like over the top, and maybe that exists, but like I say, it's just the little subtle things, even with privilege. You know, one of the things that, you know, even with privilege from your race, or just even, you know, I talked about my podcast, like, you know, I have privilege from the simple fact of my platform. It's like I think this is a conversation that we can all look at ourselves and say, you know what, how can we help those that are less privileged? How can we give more opportunity to someone that might not that might even be like, for me, one of the things that I love to do is I love to do things for people and with people that might not have never got the opportunity because they don't have a following, they don't have all these things, but they're great individuals. So I think we got to look at ourselves too and see, how are we benefiting off of privilege, whether it's our color, whether it's our status, and how can we pull people up that deserve it at the same time?
For sure. As a father yourself, I'm sure, you know, talking to your kids and educating them on life and all the things in the world is important. But, you know, how have you talked to your kids about what's going on in the world today? And, you know, for all the parents who are listening, you know, we talk about, you know, having real change comes with, you know, teaching the young people of the world maybe a different perspective or looking at things through a different lens. And how can people, whether they're Black or white, you know, educate their kids about, you know, Black Lives Matter, or just kind of speaking them about some of the things we're talking about to show, you know, to have real change in the world where, you know, 10, 20 years from now, we don't have to keep having these conversations and trying to convince people of things that should be so obvious.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think it looks different for, you know, different families for sure. But, you know, in my household, you know, my son is mixed. You know, Tristan, my wife is Filipino, I'm Black. But I told Tristan, at the end of the day, and it's just facts, like, you're probably going to be viewed as a Black man in this world. And I've allowed him to, and what's crazy is that kids, they don't see that. They don't see like, oh, he's black, he's white, he's different.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see that. And so the conversation has been kind of hard because his mind's not even there. But obviously with social media, he sees what's going on. And so my thing is educating him as much as I can. So we watch The Hate U Give. So he's saying, oh, wow. We watch 13 documentary. So he's starting to see like why these things are happening, because as he grows, I don't want to be naive to the world. But the main thing is him talking to my father. My father's growing up in the 60s, and him talking to my grandmother and understanding like how bad it was then, how far we actually came, me sharing my stories of it. And I tell him, I was like, hey, these aren't to make you scared or fearful. This is to let you know what really goes on. But this is also to put a fire in you to make sure that you over the top give love to everybody. Because the only way we're going to change this world is when we change our youth. And so I think planting the seeds of love, planting the seeds of standing up for your friends. I mean, this is even deeper than color. Like kids getting bullied. I told Tristan every single time you see a kid that's sitting by himself at lunch, you go sit with him. You go sit next to him. You be that person, because if you want somebody to stand up for you in your time of need, you have to do it when it's inconvenient. Maybe your friends make fun of you at school for you sitting with a different kid. And so I just try to instill those morals, like not just color, but just overall giving love and being a good person. And I think that's what we have to do, because a lot of these kids, like I said, I don't want to say they don't see color, but they're not judging their friends. Oh, you're white, so you're this, or you're black because you're this. I don't really see that at this age at 11 years old.
Yeah, no. And it's, you see a lot of things on the internet in terms of like, racism isn't, you're not born with it. It's something that we learn in our cultures, and that is the sad truth. And just kind of, I love how you mentioned just, we live in a time where we have to go at least one step further, right? The difference between don't be a bully versus sticking up for the people who are being bullied. That one step further, sitting next to the kid. I love that. I love those kind of above and beyond things, because just sitting back and checking yourself and making sure that you're good and you're not part of the problem.
It's not enough.
It's not enough anymore, right? And it's like everything else in this world. Like if we just do a little bit more, I come from a sales background, and we always kind of had this, I played sports too. And it was like one more rep or one more call, like just do like when at that moment when you feel like you can't do any more, find it in yourself to try to just get a little bit more done. And that can be applied to anything in your life in terms of, is there something that you can do to finish your day to say, how can I do a little bit more to help the people around me, or make that phone call, like reaching out to that friend who you're just like, we're too tired or too busy to call back. And it will probably make them happy just to hear from them. I'll tell you what, like when I have people who connect with me that I know they're busy, I'll like text them back, be like, hey, thanks for calling. It made me feel good, just to let them know that they did something for me.
Absolutely.
And so those little moments that can go a long way.
And I will say this too, to add to the parent conversation with your kid. I think the best conversation to have is your example. You can have all the conversation in the world with your children, but if they see you treating someone a different type of way, it's learned behavior. So I'm always making sure, I don't want to put a perfection thing on parents because that doesn't exist, but just making sure like Tristan knows how I feel because he sees my life. He sees how I treat everybody. So he knows like that's the standard. He sees my dad, his grandfather, how we live life. And so the greatest conversation you ever will have is not with words, it's with actions. And so you have to be that example for your child.
Yeah. I know you talk a lot about mental health on your platform. And one thing you talk about is obviously the challenge that we have of comparing ourselves to others. I know probably one of my biggest challenges too. I'm a competitive guy. I'm good at, I will say one of my strengths has been when I do compare myself to others, I try to learn from them and not make excuses for why they could be more fortunate than me. But at the same time, I spend a lot of energy and a lot of mental capacity on simply just comparing myself to things and people that ultimately don't benefit my mental health. And what are some things that you've learned along the way that you could, people could try to do to not do that thing, or why should we not be comparing ourselves as much as we do?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to be straight up about it. It's like, what does comparison really do? And I want to say, yes, there is healthy comparison. I think when you get to a place of being secure, you can actually, turn that comparison to inspiration. You can say, oh, okay, cool. I look at that and I want to be like that. Okay, that inspires me. But we live in a social media era where we're comparing even subconsciously. Like, as soon as you pick up your phone, you start scrolling, you're probably comparing your life. And I always bring up J. Cole's song, Love Yours. I think it's the perfect song. And he says, there's no such thing as a life that's better than yours. And there will always be something better. There will always be something, bigger. There will always be something faster, so you're just going to live in a race of trying to keep up with everybody else that you're going to end up burning out. And a beautiful illustration that I've been using is, there's no way you can, grow a beautiful garden by worrying about your neighbor's flowers, right? So you have to focus on yours. You might can admire them and say, oh, those are nice, but worrying about someone else will do absolutely nothing for your life. And this is as straight as I can put it. It won't. It will just lead you to a place of not feeling like you're enough, lead you to a place of maybe even jealousy, where, it can happen where you're comparing so much and you actually are admiring them in kind of a negative way that turns into jealousy. And now you're trying to be like, why they don't deserve something. And you're thinking that's going to make you feel good about yourself, but then they're going to keep succeeding and then you feel less about yourself. So comparison will do nothing for your life. And every time you compare your life, I feel like it's a disrespect to God's face, how he made you, because we all have different journeys, and you running someone else's race is only going to lead you to you being tired, to you being empty. So run your race. And my mother told me this a long time ago, and I'll be quiet after this. My mother said, we all are individuals and we all have a certain calling and purpose on our life. And when we trade in our uniqueness for another person's identity and trying to be like someone else or do what someone else is doing, we lose our power. And I've always said with that, because it's true. Like, there's people that you can reach that I can't, vice versa. And also too, it's, I talk about asking questions, and I don't want to get too in depth, but like one of the things that I always ask myself is like, do I really know their life? Because there's people with massive success, but also massive unhappiness. And the thing that you could be wishing for, like literally, is worse than what you have.
Totally.
You don't know someone's life.
I think about that a lot too. And even just like little things, right? Sometimes when we ask ourselves, how could they do that? Or how could they say that? Or I remind myself as a sports fan, right? Like, I think sports fans will have this like, how did he drop that? Why did he have a bad game? It's just like, dude, you have no idea what was going on in his head. Maybe it's like his girlfriend broke up with him, or like, well, who knows? Like he found out he got a bad report on his credit report. You don't know. Like, all these little things as humans that we deal with, right? And then from our point of view, like from our own like selfish point of view, we're so in tuned to all the things that go on in our world. The little shit that like we deal with, that we will stress out over. We'll lose our minds and have road rage, but yet we forget that every other person has these like millions of thoughts and worries and comparisons, and yet we oversimplify their actions and just be like, well, that's just obvious. Why would you do that? Why would you say that? And yet, like, we have a million built-in excuses for like our own bullshit that we do. It's kind of fascinating, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. As far as like I mean, that's something I struggle with, because I'm a really competitive guy. I'm assuming you are, at least on some level as well. Like, how can people who have that competitive spirit in terms of these comparisons, like you gave a lot of great analogies. Are there things that you maybe like struggled with? Have you always thought this way, or like,
No.
how did you like get to this point where I was just
I
like,
struggle
man,
with comparison today. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all do. Like I said, especially the culture that we're in. Like, I think if you say you don't struggle with comparison, like, what else do you lie about? Like, we all struggle with it, even if it's, like I said, subconsciously. But you just got to have triggers when these things happen. You got to catch yourself, and you got to have something that really, triggers you to get out of that space. And so for me, it's oftentimes, like I said, I don't know their life. It's oftentimes like I've gotten to a place now where, that I'm fulfilled in my life. And I know that me wanting like them to be successful, like me wanting to like congratulate them, like me wanting to give light to their life, has always worked better too. Because like I said, it's easy to be like, oh, like why they got that, or it's easy to turn that jealousy on. So I'm always trying to flip the switch. And anytime I catch myself kind of going down that pace, and I think if you write down some things or have some things in your memory bank when you start to catch yourself comparison, because like I said, how is it going to help your life? Like, and people listen have to ask themselves that question: how is me watching someone else going to help my life? Right? How is me looking at somebody's life and seeing how successful they are or non-successful? Because we do that too, right? We also find people that might not be doing as good to make us feel better about ourselves. Also, you know, it's both. Like we'll feel less about ourselves or we'll feel better about ourselves. But what does that actually do for you at the end of the day?
Oh, totally.
Those are just things that I have questions that I definitely, and triggers, I guess is a better word, that I often tell myself to kind of snap me out of it, you know, when I'm going through that. And I just think this, I will tell you this, I catch myself comparing a lot more when I'm lazy, when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And oftentimes it's a reminder for me that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm spending too much time watching someone else doing what they're doing. And so when I'm working, when I'm head down, focused on my life, I don't have the time to worry about someone else's life like that. I don't have the time to sit there and analyze their stuff. And so it always is a trigger for me too. Is like, I'm spending too much time watching this. So let me put down my phone.
Yeah.
Let me pick up a pen and let me go create something great.
That's definitely true. And we're all guilty of that. I know I can be too. And it's, you know, when you talk about obviously that, it makes me think of something like, it makes me think of like the world that we're in too, in terms of like cancel culture, right? Like the human spirit, right? And I'll admit, I've felt this feeling too. We all love a fall from grace, like the human nature. Like, why as a society do we like saying that? And we, you know, we will be like, oh, I don't wish bad on anyone. And then yet when you especially see someone at the top, and listen, some people deserve to be canceled because they've done some terrible things, but I'm just talking about little people in our circles, in our community. Like sometimes we like to see people get checked, right? And we will tell ourselves, oh, they deserved it, or they weren't this, or they weren't that. But yeah, I don't know why. And it must come, it's got to come from a place of comparing ourselves too much, of like, why do we like to see that happen to people? I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, but it's fascinating.
I'll tell you this. I remember when I got cut from the NFL, bro, like when I was during that 3-year stint, and my life was like hell, you know, like I was just, even me personally, like I was just all over the place. And I always tell people like, that's probably the time in my life where I was like the biggest hater. Like I never say anything about anybody. It's not in my nature, but I would like wish, like even like you put up Peyton Manning, I'd be like, oh, he's not that good. Like and which is a total lie because I mean, he's incredible. But it came from a place of me being insecure, right? And wishing someone else's failure kind of it made me feel good about doing nothing with my life. And I think a lot of times that's what happens. It's kind of like a fake cure for our insecurities, right? When we see it like, oh, okay, well, you know, they failed, so I feel a little bit better about myself. And anytime that I catch myself like kind of like being entertained, so I think entertainment is what's ruling this world. We like to be entertained to take our focus and vision off maybe our own problems. Anytime I catch myself being entertained by someone's struggle, I know I have some insecurities in my life at that moment. And so I immediately take my focus off of them and I focus on myself. Say, okay, like what's going on in here? Like, why am I being entertained by someone else's downfall? Because I wouldn't want that for my life.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. I really like how you said that, because that's a great way to try to identify when we do this. Like, and it sounds dirty when you say it too, but we're all guilty of that. Be like, holy shit, I'm being entertained by someone else's misfortune. And there's not a single person listening to this who hasn't been guilty of that. Probably in this past week. Like I think it's just in our nature. Our insecurities are so powerful, right? And even when we know that we're confident people, we deal with our own insecurities day in and day out. Our ego. I mean, I talk about ego all the time, and I'll even say it to my friends, be like, well, this is your ego speaking up. They're like, no, it's not. It's not my, it's this and it's that. It's just like, I don't want to admit that like my, I have these things, and it's just like, well, okay, well, that's probably your ego saying it's not your ego, but hey, that's just me. It's our egos really try to mask themselves and protect our sensitivity and insecurities are things, but when we can really put those out there, it's a very relieving feeling too. I mean, I posted something a couple weeks ago about on my Instagram where I posted this photo of me shirtless, and a lot of people thought I was too thin, and it bugged me. And I'm a very confident guy when it comes to like, taking my shirt off and silly things like that. But like, just to put it out there that it bothered me was a very empowering feeling. And just to say that like it hurt my feelings. I'm not good at saying that out loud, especially on my platform, but it really, that gave me confidence to say that. And it's something I do try to practice every day. But yeah, that takes a lot of work, to do that. But because I always catch myself, even to myself or to other people, is being like, well, I mean, I'm good. I mean, I'm fine. And I always like these little flexes that we do, right? To like let people know that we're super confident and super strong and super self-assured. And those are just, I always feel a little down about myself every time I catch myself, these little tiny flexes that I feel like, why did I need to tell people this? Like, let people see this in me. And if they don't, that's okay. It's okay if they don't see that. It's
absolutely. I think it's power when we can own, those imperfections and doing that. And it's like, it's just freedom. I definitely feel like that's just freedom for you when you can just be like, this is who I am. This is, shirt off, however y'all feel, that's how you feel. And I think that's the greatest freedom that anyone can have, man. So
totally.
Shout out for doing that, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't sure, because I was like, even when I'm posting, I'm like, oh, they're gonna think I'm soft, like, who am I? But it was a wild thing. I know you have a new book coming out, Straight Up, and I know you probably talk a lot about the things we've already discussed. But what are some of the biggest things in that book that you kind of inspired you to write it, and what you've been focusing on, and why people might be interested in checking it out?
Yeah, man. So new book Straight Up, August 4th. I'm super excited about it, man, because it's targeted to the youth. So when I say youth, probably, anywhere from, I think, 8 to 24, but I feel like it's for everybody still. I feel like, someone my age, 35, can pick it up and learn a lot. And I just wanted to be, my motivation behind writing it was like, man, I wish I had like just someone be straight up with me about different things in my life, like not the watered down, the sugar coated version of stuff. Like, why shouldn't I go do this? Like, why shouldn't I have sex as a teenager? Like, what's the real reason? Like, or why shouldn't I do drugs? Whatever it may be. And this book is just straight up just with that. And it's an easy read too. And I reached out to, I was on my Snapchat and I was like, hey, how many of y'all read books? And like, nobody was reading. Like, we're not reading nothing. And I was like, well, okay, I got to make this an easy read. So I tell people, if you like, my last book, The Greatest You, was an easy read, but it's more for a reader. I tell people, if you like, my videos, my messages, literally, like, I think you pick up this book, and whether you hear it or listen to it, or you hear it or read it, it's going to be like, you're going to be like, man, this is Trent. Like, this is Trent on video. This is it. So, super easy. I think I have 52 topics that I'm touching on in 12 different sections, but literally you can read a topic in 3 minutes.
What are some of your favorite topics from the book in terms of things that you're being very direct and straight up about, that I'm assuming this is coming from a place of wishing you would have known this earlier, in terms of
absolutely. My favorite ones, straight up about relationships. So that's relationships, friendships, all in between, teammates, everything. That section is my favorite. Another section is straight up about protecting your peace. So the mental health component is another one. Also straight up about pain and suffering. So using your past, and some of these might be young people. So it's like, what past do I have? But some of these are future tools for them and to put in their toolbox as they get older. But those sections, so I mean, I could talk about every section of the book, but those three, I think, really spoke to me. And it was like, man, I wish I would have had this, that I think is going to speak to a lot of people.
Yeah, specifically like the pain and suffering too, like having our ability to process those things, because that's really hard too, right? Anytime we feel pain or suffering, probably the most relatable one out there is heartbreak, right? Talking about relationships.
Yeah.
Like, how do we use that? Or what are some things you've done specifically to take that pain that you feel and like use it in a positive way? And, how do you do it in a productive amount of time? Because, I've been that person where eventually I got over things, but it took me longer than it should have, because I kind of wouldn't get out of this kind of, destructive pattern of almost like embracing the pain, identifying with the pain and being afraid to let that go. Or are there anything that, in your book or that you talk about that could be helpful with some of those things, or things that you learned along the way when you were dealing with your own tragedies?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, and I break it down in the simplest form, is understanding what pain produces, right? And there's a difference between experiencing pain. That's my daughter's crying in the background. There's a difference between experiencing pain and, putting yourself through the same pain. Like, I don't want you to like purposely say, okay, like I'm going to put myself in a bad friendship so I can feel this pain and learn from it.
Sure.
But I learned that pain has the power to create strength, right? Like anything we do, we know from a physical perspective, there's no way to get strong unless you put yourself, you break your muscles down, you put yourself through pain and being tired. And I feel like it's the same thing in this world. Literally, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. I wouldn't be able to sit on here on this podcast with you and talk to you for this time if it wasn't for the things that I went through. And so I try to really plant this seed in everybody's head that you're going through this for a bigger purpose. Your pain has a bigger purpose in the current moment. And so you either can surrender to your pain or you can make your pain surrender to you. You can say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that since I had to go through this, so like COVID-19 right now, like I'm making sure since I got to go through this, I'm going to get something beautiful out of it. If I have to suffer somebody breaking my heart, okay, I'm going to get something beautiful out of it. If I got to suffer getting cut from a team, okay, what I'm going to learn from this? What's going to be the lesson that not just is going to help me, but help other people down the road? And so some of the things that I went through, I didn't really realize I had to go through these things to have a kid. Now I'm teaching Tristan and it brings more healing to my life, because I feel like healing is not a destination, it's a journey. I feel like we'll spend our whole entire life healing. And so I'm realizing okay, cool. I went through that so I can help my son, in certain things, or help my daughters, or help the kids that I coach. And I think when you start thinking about it like that and telling yourself pain is power, then you'll get yourself in a different mindset. One of the things I talk about with pain that really has changed my life is perspective. I always say your perspective can either be your power or your prison, period. What's a prison perspective? Somebody listening to this right now and saying, oh, that's easier said than done. And they think about all the excuses why they can't be something. A power perspective is saying, you know what? That is easier said than done, because everything in the world is, but no matter how hard it may be, I'm going to get it done. And that's the difference that separates people, right? Yeah. Some people, you see somebody who grew up with an alcoholic father or mother, whatever, and one kid, they become an alcoholic because of their dad. One kid is like, I'm never going to be that because of my dad. So what's the difference? It's just about perspective. And so I'm really teaching a lot of perspective points in this book for kids.
I love that. I mean, if there's one thing, I haven't had the opportunity to be a father yet, but I think about that a lot, and about being a father, and how do you teach perspective? Because there's so many moments in my life when I was younger where you just think you know everything. You think you're old, you think you have it all figured out, and someone older tells you something. You're just like, yeah, I mean, it's different though. Like, oh, whatever. And then even my friends I have, or my younger siblings, I'm trying, how do I share perspective without being condescending? Or how do I, in terms of, but like perspective is kind of is the ultimate, it's the key to, I feel like it's like the key to life. If you can have perspective in your life that might be more advanced than maybe say your age or maturity level, that's such a gift in terms of, of doing that. And yeah, for the young person out there, or, whoever we are, at any point in our life, there's plenty of people usually, there's people older, even when I'm 60 or whatever, there's going to be some like 90-year-old person be like, yeah, I used to think that then. But, but if we can just try to continue to, again, open ourselves up and learn about different perspectives and see it differently. Yeah. I think the life gets so much easier. Yeah, and then check ourselves along the way too, because I'll get in my ruts too, and then have to be like, oh wait, I'm looking at this differently. How do I reevaluate? How do I see it in a little bit of a different light? And then maybe that's where that empathy comes in that you talk so much about.
Absolutely. Like I wish I try, and it's hard for kids or just even younger, but I'm like, I always try to seek out elderly people. Like, and I wish I would have did it earlier. Even from the standpoint of our parents, we used to listen to some of the things, we probably would have saved ourselves a lot of trouble. And so I'm always trying to like get around, I have one grandparent still alive, and have those perspective conversations, because usually they're right. The things that my dad was telling me when I was 15, now I'm 35, I'm like, yeah, he was right.
Yeah,
and so I just wish I would have listened more. So I'm just trying to really help kids understand that in a way. And I know it's tough at times, because like with my son, it's like, okay, Dad, okay.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm trying to help you down the line, because you're gonna see it. And it's, sometimes, one thing as parents I think can help is like, really like putting yourself. So I try to think as an 11-year-old, I'm talking to Tristan. Okay, cool. Like, well, what can I tell him that, probably at 12 he's going to experience when he gets there? He can like, oh, my dad was right. So he can kind of build that thing of like, dad is probably telling me the truth, as best as he can. So it's always a journey, with trying to connect with kids on that level.
Yeah, no, it is a challenge. And when you're younger, parents are like, how we sometimes look at our spouses in relationships. I'm sure you and your wife sometimes too. You're just like, they'll say something, you're like, oh yeah, okay. And then someone else will say it, you're like, oh, that makes total sense. And then your spouse will be like, I literally just said that to you a week ago.
Yeah,
we have a way of kind of tuning out people closest to us, and sometimes we just need to start hearing it from different people to kind of reaffirm and reassure ourselves that maybe it's our pride ignoring some of the words of wisdom that people who love us are trying to share. It's that constant battle of trying to deal with our own bullshit to try to get the information we really need, and not listen to some of the information that is harmful to our mental health or emotional well-being. That is the constant challenge. But yeah. Trent, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you sharing. Before we let you go, are you down for playing a quick little game called Do You Know Me that we play with all our guests? It's kind of a fun way to get to know our guests that we have on the show. Real simple. It's called Do You Know Me? I'm going to ask some questions. Don't answer right away. So Krissy and I are going to guess. And if you have a fun anecdotal story about, what the answer is, feel free to share. A simple yes or no.
So y'all gonna answer it.
I'll ask the question, and then we'll guess what the answer
cool.
is, and then we'll go from there. All right. Do you know me with our boy Trent? Question number 1: does Trent like camping? Does Trent like camping? I don't know what it has to say about Trent, but I
say
don't.
It again.
Does Trent like camping?
Oh, so actually, I love nature. Like, I love protecting my peace, but I always say I don't like the things in nature. So, yes and no.
It sounds like you like to glamp, Trent, like I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say yes because he does so many nature videos. Surprising.
Yeah, I love nature, but
listen, I
probably would.
I love nature too. I like going out walking, and I like nature. And when I'm done, I want to go home and take a hot shower and lie in my comfortable bed. I don't like this idea of. So yeah, that's a no. All right. Has Trent ever been on a parade float? Like, were you in a parade? And I'm gonna say you have.
I'm gonna say yes too.
It's true. I lived in New Orleans for 12 years. So yeah, I've been on a parade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even. All right. Is Trent more of a Batman or a Superman fan? Well, first of all, does Trent like comic books?
I do.
Okay. I'm gonna say he's a Batman fan.
I'm gonna say Superman.
I feel like Batman might be more popular than Superman, only for the simple fact that Superman's cheating. It's like he's Superman, and you like when Batman gets it done, you're like, I don't know how he did it, but man, that wasn't easy. And when Superman does it, you're like, well, yeah, he just like thought it and it happened. So
I like that. I'm gonna go with Batman.
Yeah,
I think Batman's dope.
Question number 4: does Trent prefer mayo or mustard? Well, I can't stand mayo, and I love mustard. Most people say mayo, so I'm gonna say mayo.
I'll say mustard.
Mustard for sure. I'll eat mayo, and mayo has to be in something for me to eat it, like tuna fish. Like I don't. Like when I get a burger, there's no mayo.
Oh, see, that's my boy. I'm with you on that.
Nick hates mayonnaise so much.
I can't stand it. All right, last question. Has Trent ever told a dad joke in the past month to his kids? I don't know. I don't think Trent's a dad joke guy.
I think he's around a lot of kids and he does a lot of youth stuff. I bet he pulls out a good dad joke.
Yeah, but I don't know. Trent doesn't seem like a corny guy, like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, like a good corny joke, but I'm going to say no.
No, I haven't. You're right, Nick.
Doesn't strike me. Trent, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your perspective about life and your story. And I think it's been a great really opportunity for myself and my audience to learn a little bit about how we can see things differently. So I wanna thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for sharing your platform and asking great questions, man. I always say, the quality of the podcast or the interview is the person, asking the questions. So you asked great questions, man. I enjoyed it. So thank you.
It's been very nice of you to say. Before I let you go, can you just remind people where they can find you?
Yeah, just at Trent Shelton, Facebook, Instagram, all that cool stuff. You just put in my name, I'll pop up. So I appreciate you guys.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, thanks for listening, guys. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to send in your questions at asknick@castmedia.com, cast with a K. Don't forget to send in your 5-star reviews on iTunes because, we like those. Other than that, make sure to tune in again on Monday for another Ask Nick episode. We will see you next time.